bring all of this back to home turf and let's talk about Philadelphia. I look at trends and I read the newspapers, and it seems like cities in the Sun Belt are on a roll. Population is growing. You got these bold-faced moves like Tesla and Austin. And we wonder, what are the implications for Philadelphia? What are our aspirations for the city? What do we need to do? You kind of raised the topic of biotech and the resurgence of and the growth of biotech in this area. But let's kind of talk about those things. What our aspirations for the city are, and what do we need to do to drive growth here? Maybe Bill, if I could kick it off with you.
Sure. So I'll pick up where Richard handed it off. The greatest opportunity that we see for Philadelphia by far is this life science explosion in the city. And I call it an explosion because it feels, at least our experience, it feels like the early days of the internet, when all of a sudden every company could show up and be a .com, and some made massive moves and created companies that have changed our landscape forever. And some failed, of course, many failed. That's always going to happen in the early days of a kind of a revolution like this. But what I had said earlier, so if I'll go back to what I said about two paradigm shifts in the office space business. The first is the ability to work remotely, is one paradigm shift. And the second is around life sciences. And this paradigm shift is the most important thing for the city of Philadelphia, because the city, as Richard so aptly said, is in the unique position of almost any city in the country of having the single most important driver for life science businesses, and that is for human capital, and that's research institutions. So if you look in the whole country, there's really only 5 to 7 cities really that can lay claim to being the place that is a fount of research institutions and what they'll produce, that human capital. And Cambridge is by far and away the leader right now. San Fran and San Diego, and then you're going to get to the next tier of cities, and there's only a handful of those, and Philadelphia is clearly one of them. And you can go through, the leading research institutions. We have them, and that's extraordinary, and that's the biggest opportunity that we see for the city of Philadelphia.
What will it take to capture that opportunity? What do we need to do differently?
Great question. Do differently, because it's so new. So you need 3 things. You need human capital. We got that, check. You need economic capital, and certainly we have access to it, although we need to create more local homegrown economic capital for the life science industries. And then we need the real estate assets. And that's something I'd like to spend a lot of time talking about, but that's something that we're very focused on, is the physical plant for these life science companies is a very specific build with requiring very specific engineering specifications. So that's a longer topic to dive into, but not every building can be a life science building. Creating them takes 3 to 5 years. So having the assets today is a game changer.
Got it. Ed, your thoughts and aspirations for Philadelphia?
Well, I echo Bill and Richard. I think that we have a once in a lifetime. I used to think it was once in a generation opportunity. Now I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to harness the unique collection of infrastructure assets that we have in the city that were never really organized or put to good use in this kind of a way. We have, we've trained the first or second largest concentration of doctors in the country for many years. We had at 1.7, now 5 medical schools. We turn out an incredible number of PhD level scientists. And we've had the wind behind us with cell and gene therapy breakthroughs that have taken place within the city. And we've started to build up an ecosystem that actually supports that growth. And it's been built up at different places in a confluence of events around the city. Bill's doing it in some of his properties. I'm attempting to do it in one of mine. It's been done at the Science Center. It's been done at the Navy Yard. There's a lot of growth all over Philadelphia. What we really need, I think, is to have our government get behind this effort and do what it can to make it easy for people and companies to relocate here. And part of that is explaining to our population that business is helpful and brings together the community and actually creates growth and jobs, not only for the high-level scientists who work in the labs, but for everybody who participates in the supply chain. So in order to accomplish a public backing of these efforts, we need to show that we can create the opportunity among our diverse communities to participate through entrepreneurship in supporting the life science business. And so we have to do everything we can to pull out the stops, because Philadelphia can't survive as the world headquarters for anything with our current level of poverty, right? We need to deal with poverty and all of the things that come out of having a society or a city where, between 25 and 30% of the people live below the poverty level. That's not sustainable if we want to be if we want to be in the top 5, and I would hope that we could be in the top 3 at some point, cities for the life sciences.
That's almost like an incredible segue to Richard, to kind of talk about poverty in the city and what kind of initiatives do you feel as a city one could put in place to attract these corporations, to attract headquarters?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. Let me just add 2 tidbits to what Bill and Ed have said. From Penn, where I'm pretty involved in this activity. Penn is the place where the mRNA technology was developed that makes our COVID vaccines possible. And last year alone, Penn received $1 billion in licensing fees for that. And the way the law works around that, all of that licensing fees has to be reinvested in more research, which is the best possible outcome. And one other tiny, example of the power of what's going on over there is Penn set aside $50 million to invest in spin-off companies in biotech from the university, of which they have about a net 25 million invested at the moment. That has brought in, and the rules around that co-investment program has to be headquartered in Philly. Penn's investment has to be a minority investment, and it's brought in, that 25 million has brought in $1.3 billion in co-investment from outside the community. So it really does have the opportunity. I think that the thought that we could be #1 in the country or the world in certain select areas of biotech is absolutely possible and perhaps even probable. Our dysfunctional city government is an impediment. We have so many things going right now. I mean, I was just in Paris and London. We were all over both cities. I didn't encounter one pothole. I can encounter 10 potholes in one block in Center City, Philly. That's not to mention the gentleman who we had the terrible fortune of getting shot 27 times outside of Budokan restaurant. That's not to mention the problems with trash collection. It's not to mention the problems with education. So, you know, we can screw this up. And, you know, Carl June over at Penn likes to point out that Pennsylvania was the place that the polio vaccine was developed that in essence cured polio. Well, the Polio Institute, the Salk Institute, is not in Pennsylvania. It's in Southern California. So unless we make investments, we aren't going to get where we need to get. And so far, the financial support from the city and state has been, you know, de minimis, you know, almost non-existent. I think there's an opportunity for the city and state to step up financially. I think there's opportunity for them to step up from a, you know, regulatory licensing and, you know, assistance. I think there's the opportunity for the education community as a whole to step up. And as was pointed out, this doesn't have to just be the MD, PhD researchers. This is lab technicians. This is everybody from an entry-level employee who's turning on the lights in the morning in the business and to the researcher in the laboratory itself. So there's education opportunities and job opportunities at every one of these levels. And I think coalescing around this in some fashion is important, is necessary, and we could fumble the ball here. I think you know, you were talking policy. You know, I think that the comment was made with the poverty levels here. How can we support, you know, world-class headquarters? Well, we have the opportunity to address that, but that's going to be challenging. It's going to take a more organized, concerted effort, particularly in areas like low-cost housing and education that we currently have. So the need is acute and the need will persist.